Welcome to another edition of Inside Town Hall. I am Jim Cameron. I am the program director of Darien TV 79 and have been for almost 13 years now. But I'm also the host and creator of this show. It's called Inside Town Hall, and the idea is we interview various chairs of boards, commissions, advisory panels, etc., for the number of organizations in Town Hall that are either elected or appointed to serve you, the constituents and residents of Darien. Our guest today on the program is Joe Pankowski. He is the chairman of the advisory committee. No, you're the Commission on Aging. Great to have you with us, Joe.
Thank you for having me, Jim. And I also want to extend a thank you for your amazing coverage of all town government, and including our commission meetings, third Wednesday, 9 a.m. every month except August. And it's so great because it really allows us to reach far beyond what we otherwise would, thanks to TV 79. I have people coming up and chatting with me on the street, thanks to TV 79, saying, I saw the show on this. What do you think about that? So it's really a great service that you provide to our community.
Gosh, there'll be a little check in the mail to you for that little plug. Thank you very kindly. Yeah, I mean, I know, having watched a lot of your meetings and having aged into your constituency as well, myself personally, you play to the camera sometimes. You definitely know there's a bigger audience than the 10, 12 people that might be in the room. But I want to talk about the commission. But first, let's talk about you, because you have, how long have you been chair of the Commission on Aging?
Since 2009, I've been a member since 1994. It's been a nice ride.
Wow. And what's your professional background? What's your day job?
Sure. I'm the chair of the Wills Trust and Probate Department at Wapsie, Rosenqueskin, and Kuriansky. Got my law degree at the University of Virginia, where I met my wife, Annie. We had two boys that went through the Darien public school system, which was amazing. Now empty nesters in town. One of the greatest things I did was got my master's in religion at Yale, because so much of what I do is pastoral counseling, in both in my practice and with my church. So, as long story short is, it's a wonderful situation I've got, and thanks to Darien for making it so easy. When you're in a position where you have a 4-mile commute to Stamford, where your kids get a great education, where you have the beaches and everything else that Darien offers, it's wonderful.
And I see from your bio that you were a sports editor at one point in Florida, true?
Yeah, I went to Florida State University, as you'll see from my Facebook page, posting about FSU all the time. But yeah, sports editor, was also a writer for the Miami Herald before going to law school, covering Florida State athletics. So that was great. I mean, yeah, I could tell you that the buffet in the Superdome at New Orleans, we saw FSU play Tulane, is to die for. So it was really great. So one of my great memories has nothing to do with FSU, except for the fact that it was halftime at their game against Tulane in the Superdome.
Wonderful. Now, the Commission on Aging, when was it established, and how many members does it have?
Sure. It was chartered in the 1970s. As noted, I came on in the 1990s. Our current members include Marcia Cleary, Peter Etter, Jerry Genovese, Susan Costin, Mary McCarthy, Jim Metzger, Sue Oakey, Ray Slavin, and Carla Thompson. And Sue and Susan are joining us for the first time in September. So we're looking forward to having them join us, and we have a full commission at that point. So it's going to be great.
And those members, are they appointed? And if they're appointed, who does the appointments?
Great question. So the typical way it happens is I go to, when we have an opening, I go to whether it's a Democrat or Republican, I'll go to the chair of their town committee and say, hey, I need to fill a spot here, because they split it between Democrats and Republicans. We're completely nonpartisan, so it's kind of strange to do it that way, but that is the way it's done. So as a result, the Democrats will suggest someone, and I'll say sounds great, or the Republicans will suggest, I'll say sounds great, and then it goes up to the selectmen, and the selectmen decide whether in fact this person is appointed or not. I will also make occasional suggestions myself when I know that there's a wonderful Democrat or Republican that I think would be great for the board, and say, you might want to talk to this person because I think she'd be great.
Are any of your members unaffiliated?
Not members I am of a unaffiliated. Party? I think as I look at the chart, I am the only unaffiliated member at the moment.
And how often do you meet, and what do you do at your meetings?
Sure. Oh, our meetings always go somewhere between 30 minutes and an hour, and I lock the meeting at 1 hour. I think anything you can do in an hour in a commission meeting. So it's very rare. Although David Genovese went over an hour because he did such an amazing presentation on his project a couple months ago. But we go every other month except August, third Wednesday of the month, 9 a.m. in room 119. We are back in person, thankfully. We were doing video, obviously, for a while during COVID, but during our meetings, we're really reviewing what's going on in town to start. So we have Beth Paris give us a report on the Mather Center. We have Allie
That's
Ramstek.
the senior center.
You got it. Mather Center, Senior Center, exactly. And then Allie gives us a report on Human Services Commission. So we're learning what's going on in town, both in terms of what's happening at the Mather Center, what's happening with Human Services. We also had Gina Bloom for a while with us with Aging in Place. She was recently replaced by Chris Jones. So we're looking forward to having Chris Jones do reports for us as well, because, At Home in Darien. That's why I keep messing up the Aging in Place versus At Home in Darien. So At Home in Darien does an amazing job with transporting seniors, offering other things to seniors in town. So we like hearing from their person as well, because it really gives us a sense of what's going on within the community. And then we have, I try to find a topic that will resonate and allow us to do what we want to do. We're an advocacy organization. Back in the day, in the 1990s, when I started, we actually had a budget, believe it or not. We were in charge of a budget and overseeing what was then the senior center on Edgerton Street. Well, they pulled that from us in the 2000s, which effectively made us purely an advocacy organization. And I appreciate that, because from my perspective, I want to be an advocate for seniors as opposed to watching the pennies, nickels, and dimes. So you have to check with Beth on this, but I believe that the Mather Center has their own budget at this point. If not, the Parks and Recreation would be involved. So I know Parks and Recreation took it over from us when this happened back in the 2000s. But Beth may be able to tell better as to whether she has her own budget at this point.
Joe Pankowski, our guest today on Inside Town Hall. He is the chair of the Commission on Aging. How many seniors are there in Darien?
That's a great question, and I took some notes on that. I do know that the Darien has at least 3,000 or more people over the age of 60, and that we're the fastest growing demographic group in town. So as a result, the needs of our seniors will continue to be paramount. And Connecticut actually has the fourth oldest state in the nation. So as a result, the needs of our seniors are going to continue to be extremely important here, because quite frankly, there's so many of us. In other words, people who need services, we want to make sure that all these people who have contributed so much to our town, volunteering in our schools, doing all the different things they've done, and now our seniors will be able to stay in town. And that's, At Home in Darien, for example, and us working hand in hand. One of the things we want to do is keep our seniors in town if possible. And believe it or not, that's an economic benefit to Darien, because you can imagine a wonderful lady in her 70s living in a house in Darien, takes very little resources from the town. But when she sells that house to a younger couple with 3 kids, all 3 kids needing education in the Darien public schools, that's not a big win for Darien economically. So to the extent that we can allow our seniors to continue to contribute to Darien, stay in their homes, it's a real win-win. And of course, as noted, 2 of my boys went through the public school. So I'm not saying we shouldn't have young children in our school system. Of course we should. But from a purely economic standpoint, servicing our seniors and making sure they're taken care of really does help the town in a great deal.
And yet Darien is known as a community where people move if they're going to have kids or they have kids,
Sure,
because the school system is so good. I believe Darien also has the highest population of people under the age of 18 of any town in the state, as a matter of fact.
wow.
I mean, look at our schools. Many communities are closing schools. We're building new schools. We're expanding the schools. So it's interesting. It's, if you plot the population, there's a lot of young people, and you're saying that the aging population is also increasing. But if you're aging in place, or sorry, if you're staying at home in Darien, there are challenges, and one of them is, maybe you're an empty nester, maybe you're a widow or a widower, and now you're living in this great big empty house, and you've been paying taxes for 10, 20 years, but now those taxes become onerous. And you start thinking, do I really need to worry about maintaining the lawn and keeping the plumbing going? And I'm living in a 3-bedroom house. I'd like to downsize. What's the challenge with downsizing and still staying in Darien?
Well, you're absolutely right. We're very lucky that we recently were able to construct the Royal on the Post Road, which allows our seniors to be in a place where they can stay in town, for example, and when they move. So for seniors who are cool with communal living, like condos, I encourage you to tour the Royal. It allows for people who have less means to be able to live there. That's great. But also say that look into other things with Allie at Human Services. Allie offers some amazing programs, which I'd love for our seniors to take more advantage of. So for example, if you have limited income and limited means, you can actually defer your taxes until you pass away or until you sell your home. So if you're, trying to make ends meet and saying, how do I pay these taxes? Guess what? You don't have to. You can delay that. Now, the challenge here, especially for seniors of this generation, is they don't want a lien on their house, okay? Because the town is willing to defer your taxes, to basically say, we'll wait until you sell your home or you pass away. But of course, they'll put a lien on your home to be able to say, we'll get paid eventually. And that word lien is a killer for some of our seniors. I paid off my mortgage 20 years ago. I don't want to put anything on my house. I want my kids to have it free. Well, if that's the case, then you got to keep paying your taxes. Whereas if you can get over that issue in your head and say, I'm willing to put a lien on my house so I can stay here and enjoy it. And the interest rate, don't ask me what that is, but it's very low. So you're effectively taking a very low loan from the town of Darien for your taxes, and that allows you to have more money for heating bills, for your prescription drugs, for your food, for caring for your house, all those things which you really need. The town of Darien does for you, if assuming that you meet these income limits.
And are there a lot of seniors in Darien who take advantage of that program?
There are not, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I wish there were more. And so that would be, have you had Allie on your show yet?
Not yet. Coming up.
Allie would be great. So that's a question for Allie as to, hey, Allie, tell us about this tax deferral program and how many seniors actually, because as Allie, that's one of the things Allie reports to us when she reports as Human Services Director to our Commission on Aging. She'll talk about those kind of numbers. It's just I don't have them at hand.
Yeah. Human services used to be called social services. And that had something of a stigma too, because I know, I'm in the group, but seniors in town are very proud.
Oh, absolutely.
And they don't want a handout. They don't want to be seen looking for welfare or social services. So I'm sure we'll talk about that. Now, one of the other alternatives that's being discussed by planning and zoning, with a big, strong push from Hartford, is what's known as accessory dwelling units, or sometimes referred to as granny pods. Now, I believe you actually had Steve Alvaney, who's the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission, come and talk to your Commission on Aging about this. What's the story with the granny pods?
Now, I'll have to divorce myself between my personal opinion and the chairman of Commission on Aging. Fair enough? My personal opinion is they're an amazing idea. I would love to be able to see those in town. It would really serve a significant benefit to my mind. Imagine if your parent lived in Norwalk or up the line in Hartford or wherever, right? Or New York City. And you're kind of concerned about having your parent move in with you for a variety of reasons. And you've got sufficient property on your home so where you could put a very small residence effectively on your land, okay? And town of Darien doesn't allow that for right now. Okay. In other words, the state would like that to happen. The state, and I agree with it. I think that would be wonderful. But I also understand from Steve's perspective and others' perspectives that that might do something to our values of our homes. It might create other issues of which I'm not aware. So the Commission on Aging has not taken an actual position on that. We do have these issues on occasion where we have disagreements. Another one is what detractors would call physician-assisted suicide, and others would call aid in dying, where we have a split on our commission as to whether we should be advocating to allow people to take prescription drugs when they're terminally ill and when they have a very short diagnosis and are in a tremendous amount of what I call existential pain. Should they be able to take their own lives with a physician's assistance and with a physician certifying that they are not depressed and otherwise are able and competent to make this decision? So the granny pods, just like aid in dying, are two issues which we have not come to a consensus on yet as to whether we should be advocating for them. So I make sure when I testify in Hartford or otherwise, and I don't have my commission behind me, that I'll say, hey, this is Joe Pankowski's opinion. This is not the Commission on Aging's opinion, because you do have issues which are sticky and which you don't have a full commission support on. So whenever I'm trying to advocate on behalf of the commission, I want to make sure I have a nearly unanimous support behind me. And we don't have that on granny pods, and we don't have that on aid and dying. So for the moment, at least, the Commission on Aging steps back and takes a look and says, okay, if you want to ask us questions, be our guest. But at the end of the day, we're not going to be advocates at this juncture.
Well, I don't want to take on the death and death with dignity issue. That's a little, we don't have enough time on today's program, but let's go back to these, I hate using the phrase granny pods, accessory dwelling units. So, I mean, what are we really talking about here? Are we talking about if you have a detached garage, being able to turn that into its own sort of standalone living unit? And I guess the definition of a accessory dwelling unit includes having some sort of a kitchen in it, as opposed to just being, a bedroom and a living room, and then, mom comes into the house to dine with the family, but a kitchen as well too. That's a P and Z kind of definition, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was about to try to defer this one, just like I did Allie with the question of tax deferral. It'd be a Steve question, right, as to exactly how you define it. But I think the kitchen is a key. So imagine, if you will, you had a basement, right, or a finished basement, and you wanted to have your mom live with you in that finished basement. I believe it would be difficult right now to be able to put a kitchen in that basement. There might be some issues there. Now, that's a Steve question, right? So I think the idea of, for example, taking your garage and finishing it and putting in, a small fridge and a small, whatever, is really the kind of way you're thinking about this. But it would be a P and Z question, right? How do they define this attached housing? How would they regulate it? What are their concerns? All that would be more of a Steve question.
Joe Pankowski, dodging the big question of the day as the chairman of the Commission on Aging. No, you're not dodging. I understand. Deferring to experts in their area of expertise. How do people get involved with this issue if they're concerned about, they either want to have an accessory dwelling unit or they don't think it's good for the neighborhood? How do citizens' voices get heard?
It's a great question. It really depends on how much of an advocate you want to be. My first time to do it, and Steve's wonderful. So just on this issue, I'd pick up the phone and call Steve and say, hey, Steve, what's going on here? And believe it or not, he's such a great guy. He'd take the call and would talk to you about that. So that'd be the first point I would make. Then I would potentially go in and watch P&Z meetings when they're discussing this. And you also have public hearings so you can make your feelings known. And these public hearings are huge because you don't know what voice will make a big difference. So back in 2009, when I started out as chairman of the Commission on Aging, the very first thing I did was go to a selectmen's meeting and rattle their cages because of what was going on at Edgerton. Edgerton Senior Center had leaky roofs. Edgerton Senior Center was previously an elementary school known as the Hollow Tree School, and incredibly had child-sized toilets. I mean, for seniors to sit on. Think about it. So I went and rattled their cage, and they got mad at me, going, "What the hell are you doing, Pankowski? You're going to force us to shut it down." I'm going, "No, don't shut it down. Clean it up or do something with it," right? So that led to Dave Campbell, okay, when he got in, reviewing all of our various things in town, and he came up with a brilliant idea. The brilliant idea was known as the shuffle, which was to move the Board of Education over to the former library spot on Leroy, move the senior center over to the vacated spot of the Board of Education. Here's what was key. The vacated spot at the Board of Education had a lot of unused space because that was a former school in Darien. The town hall was once a school, and it had all these lockers all over the place. Who uses lockers at the town hall? So Dave had a brilliant idea. The Commission on Aging got behind it. And unfortunately, it got very political because the Democrats at the time wanted to have the former library at Leroy be affordable housing. So they really opposed it. And that's why I have a U in my name, right? In other words, I actually moved from a Democrat to a U during that process because I basically said, I can't go along with my party on this one. So, we went at it like cats and dogs and went all the way to a referendum, which thankfully they lost. And now I encourage people to go to the Mather Center and see how wonderful it is. It's just such an amazing place. It is I forget, someone mentioned the words Taj Mahal during an interview with Beth Paris, if I'm not mistaken. I wouldn't go quite that far, but
it looks like a country club.
It is very nice.
It is gorgeous. It really is. And speaking of rattling cages, I remember when you went in front of the Board of Selectmen. I believe Yvonne Klein was the first select person at the time. And you really laid in on the entire Board of Selectmen. And I know that she was not happy with that experience, but I had never heard anybody speak as strongly in advocacy for seniors. And I think the thing, and I'm offering my personal opinion here, I think the thing you did so beautifully there was, I had no idea what that building was like, the senior center. I hadn't been in the senior center. I had no idea how decrepit and leaking the roofs were, and the toilets were 18 inches above the ground, designed for 3-year-olds, and seniors are being asked to use it. So do you think that over your term on the Commission on Aging, you have raised the awareness of the interests of seniors to the point that they're getting more attention in town now?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that the Mather Center really speaks to that. The town really came through eventually with the Mather Center. And what's really cool are the synergies in the town hall. You've got At Home in Darien right next to the Mather Center. You've got Allie at Human Services just down the hall. You've got David Knopf in the health department just down the hall. And COVID really showed the benefit of what we did there, right? Where were they doing the shots, right? In the Mather Center. Beth was literally handing out, brochures and stuff to people coming in so they could learn more about the Mather Center during COVID. So, and then the ability of us to be able to, I should say Beth really and her crew, to do, drive up lunches for people during COVID, to do video conferences during COVID. I mean, it really did accelerate in a way nobody really anticipated just how great it would be for our seniors in town to have the Mather Center and all that flows from that. And so we're just so blessed to have that center. We're so blessed to have Beth and Allie and all their crews to be able to serve our seniors. And so, yeah, we're seniors are starting to get look-sees. And what's also great is that you also see expanding beyond seniors. So our next big project, okay, which I encourage viewers to tune in to TV 79 for the September meeting of the Commission on Aging, is we're having Steve Mulvaney come back. Steve presented before us earlier in the spring, as did David Genovese, on questions of walkability in town. And Steve has come up with an amazing plan relating to walkability between the Darien train station, going up to the sports shop, crossing the street to David Genovese's project, which currently is the Bank of America building, which will not be there much longer, going all the way back down to what's the Boston Market is now the CVS, okay, and coming across. It will literally be a loop where you'll be able to walk from the train station to the sports shop and all the shops in between. You'll be able to cross the street and get over to the Bank of America stuff, whatever David is doing over there, right? It's going to be amazing. So that's our next big project, is how do we get people to move on this on Steve's behalf? Because again, it's not Joe Pankowski's idea. I didn't come up with the shuffle. David Campbell did. Joe Pankowski's idea is not this wonderful oval. That's Steve's idea. But when I hear an amazing idea, boy, I say, okay, let's pound this, because it's going to take a whole bunch of people putting their elbow to the wheel to make this kind of thing happen. But it would be incredible for Darien, because for seniors, walkability is a huge issue. You've got a lot of people on their freaking cell phones, driving around in their cars and their SUVs, not paying attention. So you seniors are the ones who are going to be most likely hit by these people, but it also applies to everybody else. Any pedestrian right now is taking their life in their hands when they're walking around the streets in Darien, and quite frankly, worldwide. Until we have a way of self-driving cars, people are addicted to their cell phones, and they continue to text and call no matter what people tell them, no matter what the crimes are. They'll keep doing it. So we need to find ways of making pedestrian safety a critical issue.
What are the other issues that seniors are facing these days? I mean, you undoubtedly hear from seniors on the Commission on Aging. And what are they telling you? What are their concerns?
Well, it's economics right now, right? You have inflation going much higher. You obviously have fixed incomes for them, right? So economically, how do I make this work? How can I stay in town? And of course, much like I've deferred previously, again, I'd say, please call Allie, right? Because there's not only this tax deferral program, Allie has a fuel assistance program as well. So provided that you qualify based upon a means or an income test, you'll have to ask Allie about that, you are in a position where you can actually, get some help on your fuel bills, okay? I'd also encourage, hey, listen, you don't need to use a taxi service and pay big numbers on that. You can call up At Home in Darien and have a wonderful person come pick you up and take you to your doctor's appointment. So at the end of the day, we can't solve this economic issue on the broad base. I can't suddenly figure out a way of making you happy about the situation, but I can say we do have resources in town which allow you to be in a position where you can make things work. So another factor, Mather Center, what can you get there? You can get lunch, okay, and a very healthy and nutritious lunch. So if you're saying, how do I make ends meet? Heck, even if I go to McDonald's, it's now $10. Head over to the Mather Center for lunch, right?
It's $5.
Thank you.
$5 at the Mather Center.
Best deal in town. And Beth tells me at 55 and older qualifies. So I may have to start taking advantage of it myself now that I'm 58. So the long story short is it's a great deal. And we are doing our best to try to serve seniors and figure out ways of helping them through these difficult economic times. Because, keeping them in town is really helpful. I mean, I can tell you the volunteerism in town is huge, and our seniors make up a big backbone of that. So to keep our seniors here, to figure out ways of them being able to stay here is just huge.
Joe Pankowski, chairman of the Commission on Aging, our guest today on Inside Town Hall, and we're talking about serving the 3,000 plus seniors who live in Darien, and seniors defined as 55 plus.
That's the big question, right? We all got, when you turn 50, you get the wonderful AARP card in your mail, which is just like a dagger in your heart. But as far as the Mather Center is concerned, it's 55 and older. But obviously you got a whole bunch of definitions. You have the 55 and older senior communities, right? You have the AARP at 50. I think most people think of 65, given Social Security and Medicare, as being where it really hits the road. But I think anywhere north of 50, you technically qualify as a senior.
Now, we're recording this interview in mid-September, and we've had a glorious summer, maybe a little dry, but the sunshine was shining. Got a little hot for a while there as well too. But the days are getting shorter. We're heading into winter, and there's a lot of concern about the rising cost of heating oil. Um, and you mentioned that the town has a heating assistance program, as do some of the churches and person to person as well too. How do you deal with the pride of the senior in town who is reluctant to ask for help?
It's a huge issue, pride, but it's not just an economic issue. Okay, you also have people who take pride in their own personal circumstances. So I was at a cocktail party on Saturday night, and I'm talking to a senior, and she's saying to me, and we're saying, talking about the Commission on Aging, which always comes up, and she noted she'd never been to the Mather Center. And I said, why not? Oh, it's not for me. Okay. And I'm going, really? Why? And she danced around the issue, but it was very clear that she thought that the Mather Center was for poor or lower middle class people, not for people like her. And I said, wow, there are so many programs that Beth Paris puts on, whether it's yoga or other forms of exercise, or would you take a language class, right? And so it's not just the lower economic issues that I see, but this is a senior. Yes, she was at a cocktail party. I get it. But at the end of the day, on a Tuesday morning when she's lonely and at home, wouldn't it be amazing for her to have this opportunity to go to the Mather Center and engage with other seniors, play cards, take a yoga class, so there's that pride, the term you used. It's not just economic. I don't want to take a handout. It's also a pride of place. Like I have a certain standard of living and I really wouldn't fit in with those people. And, that's a challenge, right? So I'd love for people to at least walk in the door, talk to Beth, see what's offered there. And, quite frankly, put your pride aside, see what it's like. Is this a great place? And it is, as you point out. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing place. So for people of lower means to get over the issue of pride on a lien on their home for tax deferral, okay, and people of means to get over the pride of a senior center is really for lower middle income people, I'd love to see that pride put aside and say, open yourself to the possibilities that this town really offers and that can really enrich your life in so many ways, economically, personally. It's just, there's so much offered here in town that I wish more people took advantage of.
And how are we going to help seniors in town who may not be connected to those services in the depths of winter? How are we going to know that they're not shivering in their own homes because they can't afford heating oil? Who is my brother's keeper?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I call on neighbors, basically saying, hey, this is not a government thing that's going to happen, to be blunt. I mean, Allie does make phone calls when we have major storms to people, right, to make sure they're okay, so that there is a phone list of people do it. But she's not doing that when it's 25 degrees and you don't have home oil. She doesn't know, right? So it really depends, I think, on people being their neighbor, right? Saying, what is going on next door? The shrubs aren't quite right. The grass is growing a little long. There appears to be some issues. What can I do to help this person? I was on Old Stone Road, and there was a wonderful one, and I won't mention her name to protect her privacy. She's long gone now, but I'll still protect her privacy. She lived next door to me, and I mowed her lawn because it needed it, okay? Two of our other neighbors were paying her paying her oil bills. Okay. Other neighbors were doing other stuff. This was an amazing community on Old Stone Road that really helped this lady stay in her home. And this was the 1990s. Okay. Her husband had died on the roof of a heart attack in 1958. Okay. And she was still in her home on Old Stone Road in the 1990s, thanks to her neighbors looking out for her. So it's not just a matter of government, but it's a matter of looking out for your neighbor. What's going on next door? What's going on 3 doors down? How can I help this person who clearly is relatively feeble, right? It was very obvious whenever you saw her out in her driveway. She was feeble. She needed help, but she wanted to stay there because that's where she and her husband were, right? She didn't want to give that up. Eventually she had to, it just didn't work. But for a while there, you had people getting her groceries, paying her oil bill, mowing her lawn, all those things that neighbors can do. And quite frankly, it makes you feel really good when you do that. So it's a real benefit.
I think I know that story, and I know the people who are actually paying her oil bill, and they were doing it on the QT. I don't think
Yep,
she even knew.
they sure were.
They got a reduced. She got the oil bill, but she was wondering why it wasn't going up. It's because her neighbors were helping pay for it, which is
Right.
extraordinarily generous. But that's why we call it a community.
Mhm.
Before I let you go, a lot of people who watch TV 79 are seniors, and they're living alone at home. And in some ways, we are their outlet to the world. We're their companion. What are the dangers of isolation, especially when you're senior and you're not getting out and you're not talking to folks? What are the risks of that? And I think you've already hinted at what some of the solutions might be.
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one is depression. I mean, it's feeling abandoned. It's feeling like I'm alone. It's feeling not worthy. It's what does my life mean anymore, right? And so whether it's at a religious institution, whether it's at the Mather Center, whether it's wherever, reaching out and trying to get out of the house, using At Home in Darien for the car service. We do see these problems, and it also involves hoarding, where people really start stacking up stuff in their house, their reading material, whatever. And so we want to say, we're here for you. The town is here for you. There's no reason to be alone in your home 24/7, 365. There are things that can be done. There are people who want to help. And so, don't find yourself so isolated that you can't, feel like you can contribute, because you can contribute. That's just it. There's so many volunteer opportunities in town where things are needed, whether it's over at St. Luke's in person to person, or you name it. There's so many opportunities for people to get out and do stuff. And even if you don't want to get out and do stuff to help other people, you can be helped yourself by going over to the Mather Center and taking a program or doing other things, getting a lunch for $5. There's just a great deal of opportunities to get out of your home. And again, because At Home in Darien provides a car service, that you're not talking about walking to the Mather Center. You can get a lift to the Mather Center.
Hear, hear. And Darien Men's Association, I can recommend as well, too. Having been a member of that for a number of years. And many of the talks that you see on TV 79 come from the Darien Men's Association. So they meet in person and on Zoom as well, too. So that's enough of the plug. Joe Pankowski, our guest today on Inside Town Hall, the chair of the Commission on Aging. I want to thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for all of your volunteer work in town. And please thank the other members of the commission as well, too.
I sure will. And thanks again for all you guys do at TV 79. It means a lot to everybody.
Thanks. And thank you, our faithful viewers. Yes, you've watched another edition of Inside Town Hall.